Hey, Bran, we're live. Who do you want to do a shout out to?
My dad in Idaho and my mom wherever she may be.
Mom and Dad, here we go. Guys, I get so lucky every day. I really, really do. Today we're going to talk to Bran Griebel. She's today's amazing guest, and she's a author, teacher, coach. And after her mother dealt with Alzheimer's and dementia, she wrote a book called Love Doesn't Care If You Forget. And she continues to write inspirational messages for Humankind Daily in her email blog. And then through the written words and conversations, she explores life, death, and what it means to live fully in between. I've read her book. It's amazing. It made me cry multiple times. Brianne, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I'm very excited.
I'm excited too. I just have never actually, I've had books that actually, made me tear up a little bit, but never books that made me just like full on like, like this. Like,
I,
yeah, that's just not right.
I'm sorry and you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've mentioned on the show a couple of times that my parents have passed away,
Mhm.
and I don't think that I fully dealt with it. And your book had me, even though my parents didn't have Alzheimer's, they did have the memory loss and would forget what they were doing.
Mhm.
So let's just jump right into this whole subject
Do
for
it.
people that are watching. When you have a parent, in both of our cases, that forgets who you are, who they are, what the world around them means, how do you deal with that?
Uh, Variably.
Okay.
Uh, Moment by moment. There's
Okay.
the thing I learned through taking care of my mom and the whole experience with her is there's no recipe. There is no formula. There are a lot of people out there who give really great tips and resources for like how to be with them, how to take care of them, and those are really really great things. Like Teepa Snow comes to mind. She's a great resource, but emotionally, there's no preparation. And this is kind of what the whole book is about. Is my mom showed me just how to show up moment to moment with where she was and where we were,
Hmm.
and that's it's a letting go of everything I had hoped and everything I wanted and everything I was trying to do. Is just kind of like letting that go and just seeing what this particular moment in time is calling for, which is going to be different than 5 minutes from now.
Right. So what was the first time that you actually saw that your mom forgot who you were?
It was, and this is also in the book, that it was she was losing things here and there for many years, long before she was diagnosed, and that's pretty common too. But there was a moment, my husband and I, we lived in a different state, but we were with them for the holidays, my parents, and she had come into our room. Everybody was asleep. She had come into our room, and I'm a light sleeper, so I woke up and I just watched her walk out, and I thought that was strange. So I went to go see what was going on, and she was just wandering around in the dark, and she was very upset. And I asked her, "Hey, what's wrong?" And she looked at me and she said, "This is my home, but I don't know who you people are," referring to me, my dad, my husband, my brother. I don't know who you people are. And that was the first time she had not recognized me as her daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that when you got that revelation from her?
It was, and again, explained more in depth in the book, but
Yeah.
the way I talk, it was the longer, the more time passes from the moment that happened to, like the further, like, the more I reflect on it, the 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 best I have to describe it, it was that it was actually a spiritual experience.
Okay.
um, because the person, like the me, I talk about myself as like Brienne in the third person, the Brienne who was worried about her mom for years, who was trying to take care of her, who was dreading this moment. Like for years before this moment, I had dreaded this moment. Like I was like, oh
Right.
my God, there's going to come this time when my mom doesn't know me. And like, just this lead weight inside of me, like thinking about this moment. That version of myself didn't show up. Um, And the only way I know how to describe it is that, like, in its place, there was just grace. There was just acceptance. There was just seeing a very vulnerable, scared woman in front of me who just needed love. And so I didn't worry about any of that. And I just showed up for her. And I'm like, oh, that must be very scary for you, you know, trying to orient her to something more concrete.
Yeah. And I have to say, like the first time that my mom actually forgot that she had kids,
Mm.
and I was there, they were actually testing her, to see
Oh,
what
yeah,
she
yeah.
remembered and didn't remember.
Hmm.
And she didn't remember that she had kids. And then it came back to her, and she did remember again. And I do remember the first time that we were sitting at our breakfast table in the breakfast room, and she says, Paul, how are you doing today? And I'm like, Paul, Paul. And then I remembered Paul was her best friend
Mm,
from growing up.
mm.
And she recognized me as Paul. And then, as far as my dad, who was sitting at the other end of the table, she didn't realize who he was at all, even though he was the one taking care of her the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's scary for me. And I don't fully understand how, when someone has Alzheimer's or any type of dementia and they don't recognize their surroundings, how it is that they let people take care of them. I don't know how that happens.
Well, um, it's strictly an emotional state from what I understand. Like my mom, for example, became very aggressive with my father before she did me, because my father, bless his heart, he was very, very good at taking care of her physically, like helping her get dressed, bathing her, feeding her, changing her when that became necessary. But he did it in a way. I'm sure I can't say what his emotional state was, but I'm sure he was resentful that he had to do it in the first place, and
Mhm.
so, but he didn't. So he didn't know how to meet her emotionally. So she, I think, emotionally, like it was difficult for her and for her to let him take care of her, um, because I think there was just this emotional like resentment on both their parts. Whereas I had a much easier time for a longer time, because for whatever reason, like I was just much more patient, and I was also coming in second string. Like my dad had been doing this for years before I showed up, so I was probably
Right,
more fresh.
right.
He had, and that's the reason I became her part-time caregiver, is because he had been her full-time and it was killing him. So um
It
I
is a
think
full-time job taking
it
care of
is.
somebody.
It
It's
is. I really think it all comes down to moment by moment how safe and secure the individual is feeling,
mhm. The
you know?
individual, meaning the person with the
Yeah, the
dementia.
person with dementia. Like, how are they feeling safe and secure? Are they feeling comfortable? And if they are, they're more likely, for a long time, my mom had this kind of sweet spot phase. It sounds weird to say, where she stopped worrying. My mom was a worrier her
Mhm.
entire life. She worried about all the things, big and small. And then there was just this phase for a couple years where she just forgot to worry. Like she just, you know? And so
Yeah,
in that time, like she was, she was just kind of happy for a while,
yeah.
Like,
The whole concept of love doesn't forget, right?
mhm.
Is It's like hard for me to grasp, because at one point in the book you talk about your mom dropping F-bombs and talking to you in that tone, which she never did. And then at at some point, not only is she yelling at you, but she doesn't know who you are and you're yelling. How do you continue to love someone who's just berating you, doesn't know who you are, and it's just gone? You're just there. What is that?
It's I don't have a logical answer for it. But when I say like the experience with my mom, not just that first night where
Mhm.
she forgot me and I didn't show up, something else kind of showed up to take care of her. I saw that in multiple ways throughout the years and the 18 months where I was taking care of her. Um, this, life kept taking my mom away. Like I wasn't her daughter. She didn't know my name. Like sometimes she didn't know who I was. It just kept stripping all of these things away, and sometimes putting things in their place that I didn't recognize, like my mom cursing. My mom, like, she would have episodes where she would use language I don't have no idea where she heard this stuff.
Right.
Like,
It's Al
um,
Pacino kind of thing. Yeah.
right? And so it's kind of like my mind recognized this isn't real. Like for neither of us. It's obviously not real for her, but this is not what is true. This is not what is concrete. This is the stuff that comes and goes. Her
Hmm.
mood comes and goes. Who I am comes and goes to her. Like all of this stuff that comes and goes is not the real deal. The real deal is what's underneath all of that. And to
Gotcha.
me, that's love. The
So,
stuff underneath everything, I have no better word for it than love.
so keep going into this because it's like the person, entity that you loved, that entity is not there anymore,
Hmm.
right? Even when they pass away, even for me, I'm gonna try not to cry. Um, Dad is gone. My mom is gone. Um, what what are you loving? The memory? Are you loving the thoughts that you had for them? What is it that you are still holding on to after that is person is gone?
I mean, it's love itself. Like, there's a whole chapter in there that love isn't personal. And I never realized the extent to which we turn, like, we call love an emotion, or we make it personal.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's kind of part of being a human being, I think. But, I guess one way to put it is the experience with my mom, more than anything else in my life prior, had stripped everything that you could call ego related,
Okay.
like anything identified with the self, either myself or herself. For the first time, I actually saw how how
Transitory.
thank you.
There you
That's
go.
the word I'm looking for. How transitory all of that is. But something has to be solid to allow those transitions to happen. And so again, it's hard to talk about it, and I did my best to put it in the book, but it's like, what is there still? Because I still felt love. I felt
Mhm.
hurt. I felt pain. I felt anger. I felt frustration. I felt grief. But there was also still love. There was never not love.
Okay.
So
So,
that's to me the thing it's the foundation of any relationship. Like, it is just pure love, and it's not contingent upon how am I doing, how's she doing, what are our moods like, what is our cognitive relationship to each other, like it's like beyond the conscious mind.
okay.
It's beyond logic, it's beyond reason, it's beyond words. It's, that's all the rational part of ourselves. Again, nothing wrong with any of that, but beyond the rational mind is something else. And that's what I saw with my mom, because her rational mind was Swiss cheese.
Right. So how has it changed like the way that you like deal with people on a daily basis now that are still here in your life?
The interesting thing is, like, humanity at large, I have vast more compassion for. Not that I was angry with humanity to begin with. Sometimes. Um, sometimes.
Yes,
Um,
sometimes.
but that was the experience with my mom, was the first time I had dealt with something of that caliber. Like, I had made it 35 years of my life without experience like a close death, either friend or family.
Right.
I'd had, the heartbreaks and the ups and downs, but the biggest tragedy was my mom, and that started when I was 35.
Okay.
And I realized nobody escapes this. Like, no, like, not necessarily this specifically. Not everybody will, have a parent that has Alzheimer's or dementia, but everybody is going to experience this kind of bombshell that will rock their world,
Yes.
that will rip away the foundation of what they thought was and that they could count on, and they aren't going to have that anymore. And that opened up this deep well of compassion. Now, see, I'm going to cry. That, my God, like, because every single one of us is going to go through this, it at least once, if not multiple times in their lives. Like, everybody deserves the utmost compassion and kindness while they're going through, like, always, but especially when they're going through those things. And it just, so when it comes to like how it changed my relationship with people in general, overall, I'm much more compassionate. I'm much more
Mhm.
patient than I used to be. In my specific relationships, I pay much closer attention to things than I did before. Like, even with my husband, like, I remember so many times thinking with my mom, before she passed, and now even after she's passed, of all the things I didn't keep track of all the
Right.
things I missed, of all the things I wasn't really present for. Like a lot of times near the end, I was holding her hand a lot, and she found comfort in that. And I thought, how many times did I not hold her hand? She doesn't
Right.
even know who's holding her hand right now. And I feel like I missed out on some deeper connection while she was still aware.
Yep.
And that made me hyper aware of, well, where can I still find that? I have a different relationship with my father now. I have a different relationship with my husband. Like I'm much more aware. Every time my husband and I hug, I just kind of have this thought of like, what if this were to be the last time?
Yep.
Not in a depressing way, but actually in a very like, well, let's make this a good one. I'm paying really
Yeah.
close attention to like what does he feel like against me, and like what are his eyes like? I'm just it's made me much more aware, and it's made my life much richer
I
and deeper.
understand that completely because now that my both of my parents are gone, I look at it and I go, we were not a I love you family. Like
Mhm.
never did my dad ever say I love you. That those words never came out of his mouth. Actually, they never came out of my mouth, and I feel we'll just maybe not go too far there. I feel
Mhm.
bad that I never got to tell my dad that I love him,
Mhm.
right? And I feel bad that my mom started with I love you like a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
And now, since both of them are gone, I look back at the things that I never ever got to do, right? And I'm like, all right, they're gone. I still haven't dealt with that grief. But as far as like everyone else in my life right now, I am going to hold on to them and let them know how much I love them and do the things like you just said. Feel that hug. It may or may not be the last one, but it's so important, right?
Yeah. And I really do feel like, you know, once you kind of soften the idea of who your
Yes.
parents were and are, you see them extended. So I think it's really beautiful that because of that relationship with your father and recognizing that you now say I love you to other people. And in my
Yes.
mind, to me, you are also saying I love you to your father. That's
That's a
just
good way
how
to
it
look at it.
looks to me. Like it stemmed from him and a recognition and an awareness of something. And so that's an extension. Like to me, that's how like everything is kind of connected. That's how it's just the way it looks to me.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think if that's there's lots of lessons I look back on and go like, oh, my dad taught me this, that, and the other. And I think maybe what you just said is that's another lesson that he inadvertently taught me, and
Hmm.
I'm passing it along. So I'm much more free with I love you. I
Hmm.
want you to be in my life, and I hope things go well for you.
Hmm.
You know? That's awesome. If what is it that you would tell people who are going through this type of grief right now? And we all know that everyone's going to go through it. Just in summary, what is it that you want to say to everybody?
um, I guess what I would say now, I think we talked about this earlier that anytime I get asked a question like that, I have a different answer.
Mhm.
Because in this particular
Yeah.
moment, what does it look like to me? And I guess it would be not to be afraid of the grief. Um, I'm a huge proponent of feeling your feels.
Hmm.
And having and again, this is something that the experience with my mom put me much more in touch with my feelings than any other experience had. And I've seen how healthy that is, and how we were made to feel. We were made to experience elation and grief.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's easier to actually face it when it shows up. You don't have to force it. It's like you don't if you're not grieving at this particular moment, you're not. But when it shows up, it's almost like welcoming it in, making it a cup of tea,
Yeah.
sitting down and going, here we are.
Yeah.
And in my mind, again, this is just for me, but like the feeling of the grief is another way of honoring. It's evidence of how deeply you love and have loved.
Yeah.
Like it's just you don't I don't know why it's made this way, but you don't get love without grief. You just don't.
You need to write that down. That's a quote right there. That's a soundbite right there. You don't get love without grief. And that's when you think about it, that is true. They go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
two sides of the same coin. Why it's
Yeah.
made that way, I don't know, but just and that's kind of it's I think it's healthy to be in touch with reality.
Yeah.
And reality is that there is love and grief and they're this the same coin, you know.
Yeah.
Um and recognizing that just it puts you in a more right relationship with existence.
Yeah. I want people to be able to get in touch with you. I want people to read your book. I insist that people read your book because it is extraordinarily personal and good and cathartic and open and relatable. I need some bigger words in my vocabulary so I can help people understand that your book is something that should be read. And it's short. You can read it
Yeah,
fairly
here I got look at
quick.
I got a visual like that's how it's a little booklet.
Yeah.
That's 10,000 words. And that was on purpose. Like it's a very deep topic and it's not something you want to sit with for hours on end.
No.
You need breathers and
I try and read other people's books before they come on the show. I read your entire book, and it's like I am definitely going to read it again. So
mm,
we'll be there. So people can get in touch with you at your website,
mhm.
briangriebel.com,
Yes.
and they can also. Uh, this is the different website. What is this one about?
So Love and Dementia, I'm not on as much as I used to be, but I'm going to continue to keep it up because I originally created it to share the stories of dementia because I think there's a real profound catharsis in seeing other people's stories and also sharing your own.
Hmm.
That I haven't done as much, but if you go to loveanddementia.com/resources,
Okay.
if you are somebody who is going through this with a loved one, I put up, I think there's 6 to 9 of some of the most helpful things that I came across on my journey. There are, resources like the Alzheimer's Association, but there's also like a Facebook group that I actually found extremely valuable.
Yeah.
It's one of actually the most helpful things. There's a lot of active people who are going through it. So that link is on there. That I will keep up probably for a long time because I think,
I think one of
having,
the best things that you wrote in the book and we talked about previously was the fact that everyone has these thoughts and questions in their minds about you don't say them out loud because it sounds like you're a bad person, but
Mhm.
after you start talking to people, everyone has the exact same thoughts, you
Yep.
know, and we'll just let that go right there. You're also on Instagram and at Brian Griebel, and
Mhm.
you're also on Facebook. So people need to get in touch with you. Again, I'm telling you, read the book. It's amazing.
Mm,
You'll appreciate yourself for doing it. So
thank you.
thank you very much. And I'll be back in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Well, you know where to find me.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Michael.